Tim Denning has had some massive business lows, each time picking himself up, dusting himself off, and having another crack. He's now one of the most prolific content creators in Australia on the topic of personal development and entrepreneurship. How prolific, I hear you ask? 480,000 words per month prolific. If you're keen to discover how writing can turn your business and your headspace around, then you've come to the right place. That's RIGHT, by the way. Sorry, dad jokes have started already. It's a mind-boggling episode 637 of the 13-year-old award-winning small business big marketing podcast.
Well, I said, welcome to a small business marketing show where successful small business owners share their souls to take your marketing straight to the lead. Now, here's your host, Mr. Timbo Reid.
And welcome back to your weekly dose of wordy marketing. I'm your host, Timbo Reid, and I have an insatiable curiosity for uncovering marketing ideas that help businesses just like yours to grow. I do that through a weekly in-depth conversation with a successful business founder. You, infinitely more importantly, are a motivated business owner, ready to crank out some great marketing to build that beautiful business of yours into the empire that it absolutely deserves to be. As per usual, team, there's marketing GOLD dripping from the ceiling over here at Small Business Big Marketing's HQ. So let's get stuck right in.
Hi Timbo, it's Glenn Hanson here from Vector Health and Performance. I'd just like to say that over the last quite a few years I've been listening to a number of episodes, but one really stood out the other day, which is the video marketing chat with Troy Dean. In terms of just, we have a business that is allied health and physical performance coaching, and obviously your personal brand is part of a part representing a bigger brand. So when you do video content in our industry, especially, you're really doing a couple of things. One is giving people education, so educating people on how to do exercise, how to do rehab, or something like that, so that you can use it for your own customers and others. And I really like that idea around creating a video that you can send out to a customer or also a prospect. And so we do a lot of posting in on our website and also filtering that back to social media, and that's been really useful for us. And we go with the approach that we primarily just educate people. We don't really sell anything or too much, sales type mentality with that video marketing. It's all about helping our guys build their own personal brand. We just have a saying that, what we want our people to do is do what they do best. So when we teach them how to video market, and we've been able to give someone a great opportunity that, she does all our digital marketing, and she's done it for quite a long time now, is we really talk about, branding yourself as a clinician or a coach, and the type of person, who are you talking to, who you're trying to attract. And mate, that's, when Troy and yourself were discussing that, it really hit home, and, we've been able to show that episode to a couple of our guys who are a little bit scared about getting up on video and thinking what they look like. And, it's really helped them. So, mate, thank you, and keep up the great work, because you make a massive difference to small business in Australia. Thanks. Bye.
Hey, Glenn, thanks for being a listener, buddy. Hugely appreciated. Thanks for sharing what marketing's working for you, and thank you for taking action. I find that super inspiring. Hey, I'm rapt that my chat with Troy Dean in episode 630 had such an impact. I've had some great feedback about that episode on my Facebook tribe. People have been emailing me. I know Troy's also had a number of people reaching out to him, which is awesome. The bottom line with video marketing, or any other content channel you decide to go down, where you're going to be sticking your head above the trench, as I say, whether it be podcasting, video, blogging, whatever, you just need to take the mindset that it's not about you. No, it's about improving the lives of those who are consuming your content. And that should help take the pressure off worrying about how you look or how you sound. I remind myself of that mindset every time I hit record on my podcast, every time I walk on a stage to give a keynote, wherever I'm sharing marketing insights and inspirations, I don't worry about me. I mean, I do a little bit. Am I sounding okay? All that kind of stuff. But no, not really. I worry about you, the business owner who's given me your time in order to learn, in order to improve, in order to be better. And that is the mindset that you need. Then you become less self-conscious. How is my hair? Hey, everyone else, be like Glenn and give the Small Business Big Marketing Hotline a buzz on 0480 015 150 and let me know which episode resonated with you or what marketing is working for you and your business right now. That's 0480 015 150. Put it in your phone under Timbo. A very warm welcome to my new Patreon members. Thank you guys for listening and taking action. They are, in the last week, James Ray, Shane Houston, Ben Marshall, Jamie Robinson, and Joshua Yeager. And I'm so glad you enjoyed the little surprise you received from me upon joining. Thanks, guys, for your support. It makes a massive difference to the work I do for small business. It's hugely appreciated. It helps make this podcast bigger and better than ever. So thank you. For those yet to join, my membership starts at a tax-deductible $8.50 a month with no lock-ins, none of that. There's 3 tiers, Bronzelicious, Silverama, and GOLD, of course. You choose. And my one aim is to build on the marketing ideas and advice you get from this free podcast. And I do it by uploading weekly videos to my membership where I share ideas I see in my travels, along with reviews of productivity tools I use that save me time and money, and they can help you too. Plus, I host a weekly Ask Me Anything session where we get together over a virtual glass of wine, beer, cordial, water, cup of tea, whatever floats your boat. You can check out my membership over at patreon.com/marketing podcast. All right, Tim Denning, welcome to the Small Business Big Marketing Podcast. Now, Tim, it's very unusual for me not to have introduced my guest prior to bringing them on. But I want to introduce you while you're in front of me because your bio is something to be reckoned with. So allow me. It all started when you worked as a DJ in a strip club and some of the most popular clubs in Melbourne. At age 26, you owned a large importing business with 100 plus employees that you walked away from due to poor mental health. At the same time, you were producing and releasing electronic music. In 2011, you got a job working in a bank's call centre on minimum wage. Geez, that would have been great for your mental health. Not. You quit that in 2019 to work for a social media company, got fired from that after 6 months. You then were unemployed for 6 months and, in your own words, felt like shit. You then got a job back in a bank. Why not? Working in IT, which you quit 18 months ago to write online full-time and run your Bad-Assery Academy. Now, this is where, I was going to say this is where it gets impressive. It's already been pretty impressive. You now write 480,000 words each month on the topic of personal development across your own blog, the Teachable platform, and your Bad-Assery Academy. And you've got offered a book deal 8 weeks ago from Penguin Random House. Tim, thanks for being on the show. It's been an absolute delight.
It has. Yeah, it's been good to connect.
Mate, you can tell us, what was the pivotal moment in you finding your writing voice?
Oh, I love this question. And I think you sort of said it in the rundown there. The pivotal moment was really the collapse, right? Like where that sort of mental health stuff just hit a really dark spot. And then, that's really powerful because at that moment it's like, well, I've got nothing to lose. Like nothing is working. So what have I got to lose? And that was the pivotal moment. And what obviously happened at that moment was I was able to recover from all the issues that I was going through. And I didn't mention this in the bio, but I was lucky. I met a guy in Perth, Australia. He had like a personal development blog and I was just a fan of it. I was reading it and I got to know him a little bit and he offered me the opportunity to write on his blog. But I had a few parameters which I didn't really like, which was he wanted me to interview the customers that I was working with in banking, particularly the tech companies. So what I would do is I would do a podcast like this, except I would have to transcribe it into an article and then post it on the site. And as I was doing that, they read like startup press releases. I was pretty bored. I wasn't that inspired by it. And I was at the same time I was doing that, I was going through the mental health sort of recovery. And one night I just accidentally wrote an article about what that recovery was like and what I was kind of learning. And they posted it on Facebook, and it had 84,000 shares. So not likes, not comments, actual shares, people resharing it. And that was the pivotal moment where I realized, okay, so maybe I shouldn't be writing these stupid startup press release things that no one cares about. But I didn't know. You don't know what you don't know. You just start, right?
How interesting. 48,000 shares. That is
84,000
84,000 shares. Significant. So you're an entrepreneur at heart. You've been producing, releasing music. You've run this importing company with over 100 staff. So entrepreneurial blood running through the veins. But writing, you're also a writer at heart? Or did that sort of come out at some point during this very interesting bio of yours?
It came out sort of accidentally. If I think back to high school, I was always told by English teachers that they thought I had a bit of a spark around that area, but I kind of ignored it and I wasn't that interested in it. But what I explain to people is like, writing is kind of like therapy. So the problem is you have thoughts inside your head, but a lot of the time, like when you wake up the next day, you forget those thoughts, and those thoughts kind of tell lies and they create all these illusions about what's possible. And what I accidentally discovered through this writing process when I was writing about the recovery was I was like, this is kind of like therapy. And by putting it down in words, no longer was it lies, it was actual truth on a page. And so I think that was something that sort of happened just accidentally. I mean, you got to remember that opportunity that I got from that guy in Perth. Like, I would have preferred that he said, hey, I want you to interview these people and put it on my iTunes podcast. But that's not what he said. He said, no, I do that. You're a nobody. You have to write them. So I was kind of forced into it in a way. And even now, I don't think of it as like something that I'm good at or whatever. It's just a kind of a vehicle. And so I'm really a big believer that everyone should be a writer in some form because it starts to clarify your thinking. And people often give me this compliment that when I do public speaking or whatever, that I'm very clear and precise about whatever it is that I'm talking about. I tell them, like, it never used to be like that. It's just when you've written for 9 years straight on the internet, you just really get good at getting to the point. So I'm a big believer in it.
Mate, I totally concur. I mean, I do a lot of public speaking, a lot of keynotes for small business owning audiences. And when I was a novice at it, I was pretty average. But then I got a speaking coach, and her name's Zara. And Zara said, you've got to write down your keynote. The first thing you got to do is write the script. Not that you're going to operate off a script, but once it's in words and you've mucked around with those words and you've edited and you've taken out words and replaced them, and it's become very familiar in your head, it all of a sudden comes to life. And it changed everything for me. And even to this day, there's one keynote I've delivered probably 500 times, and I can still see the script. I'm not reading the script in my mind, but it was solidified by the fact that I wrote it out.
Yeah, it's very powerful. Over the years, I've sort of thought about my own personal mission, and I used to kind of write on the internet that it was to inspire the world through like personal development and entrepreneurship. And that's kind of evolved over time where it's starting to become like to basically encourage people to write on the internet. But not for the whole like sort of social media multi-level marketing scheme that I like to sort of talk about, or the influences. Not because of that, just because, like I said, it clarifies your thinking. It helps you kind of show your value. And the biggest objection that I get from people is they say, I'm not a writer. And I really push back on that. And I go, well, but you're writing emails every day. You're writing PowerPoint presentations at your work. You're already writing. All I'm asking to do is take what you're already doing and just post it on the internet. And it doesn't matter where you want to post it. That's up to you. But it starts to become like a magnet for opportunities. And that's what I try to explain to people. It's like it seems like silly and useless at the start, but when you do it for long enough and you write about certain topics, those people that are interested start to sort of enter your stratosphere. Yes. And that's where the business opportunities in that come from.
I'm dying to get your answer about AI and how it's impacting your industry. However, keep your powder dry on that, because there is a massive gap between writing an article for some random fellow in Western Australia that got 84,000 shares and you now writing 480,000 words a month on your own platforms and making a decent living from it. So let's try and fill that in, because I guess where I want to get to, Tim, is I want my small business owning listeners to understand that writing is powerful and important. I'm wondering whether they should all have a blog. I'm a big believer in blogs. I'm guessing you are too. But what is a blog these days. So I want to explore all that. But how did you go from that one article to where you are today? Let's try and fill in the gaps.
I mean, it's the crux of like personal development. So it's habit formation. What I started with was writing one article a week after hours when I wasn't working in the call center. And eventually, as I started to publish those, I started doing 2 and 3, and I got a little bit addicted to it. And then if you just basically times that out over 9 years, it's sort of impossible for you not to have built something, really.
Were you posting them on at timdenning.com? Where were you posting them at this point in time?
So I started originally on my friend's blog, which was addictedtosuccess.com, which was just a WordPress blog, right? It still exists, but it's kind of not really what it was back then, right? So I was posting them there. And then at the time I was doing a lot of research and I was Googling, and this website, medium.com, it kept coming up in Google searches, and I kept reading things on there that I liked. So I started on there as a reader, same as I did on the friend's blog, right? So that's always the start, as you become a fan. And I was watching and I went, this is really interesting what they're doing on this website. Like, they're making writing popular again. So I thought, well, whatever I'm posting over on that other blog, why don't I just copy and paste it over to here? So I started doing that. It didn't really work, and I never advise people to do this kind of copy and pasting. I don't think it's contextual, but I did it anyway.
Well, Google actually will spank you for it if you've got mirrored copy.
Yes and no. Medium allows you to do canalochial links, so you can have duplicates without Google penalizing you. So there's always
Canalochial?
Yeah, they're called canalochial links. Yeah, I think that's how you say it.
I do love a new word.
And so, yeah, that's how you present that. But so I started putting them on Medium, and then I fell really in love with it, and I started writing specifically for Medium, right?
Can we just pause? Because you actually sell a course on writing for Medium. Just explain what Medium is.
Yeah, Medium is it's basically like a social media platform for medium-sized content. So if you think about Twitter, that's like short-form content. And if you think about like a university essay, that's like 10,000 words. Medium is like 1,000 to 2,000 words posted on the website, and people can comment and reply. It's sort of social media, but it's not. And it's become more of like a Forbes publication over the years than a Twitter type social media platform. So I was just publishing the articles there. And then, over time, I was also at the very start, I was writing on LinkedIn, and I was writing career stuff specifically. And I was also resharing a few articles from the WordPress blog there as well. So that was kind of the foundation. Obviously now it's blossomed out to a lot of other areas, but that's where it started.
As you're writing the career stuff on LinkedIn, as you're writing the entrepreneurial stories for Medium, was there something inside you saying, this is boring, the plates aren't aligning, I should be writing, there's something deeper or another topic that I should be writing about, which ended up being personal development?
Well, the thing is, if you look at what I do now, I don't write about one topic. So personal development, writing on the internet, making money on the internet, productivity, flow states. So like I don't have one topic, and that goes counterintuitive because everyone tells you, oh, you've got to have this micro niche of like marketing, otherwise you're breaking the rules. And I've never done that.
I've got so many questions, man. Sorry to keep interrupting, but hopefully they're helpful to the listener, and we will continue down the path of, Medium didn't work, so what did you do? You do write a lot. I mean, you're publishing 8 articles alone over at timdenning.com. God knows what you're doing on Medium and all the others. But one thing, it does sound counterintuitive what you said, because people need a reason to follow you. People follow me because they know they're going to get some insight, tips and tricks around marketing for small business. If I started to talk about holidays or taxation or HR, then I sort of break away from what I call my editorial mission, and people go, what's Timbo on about? You've gone the other path where your readers actually don't know what they're going to get next, but it seems to work. Help me.
Okay, so my view is different. I think that people follow you based on your view of the world, right? That's the first thing. And the second thing, which annoys people, is I tell people that everything is connected to everything. So if I'm writing about entrepreneurial stuff, guess what?
Sounds like a get out.
Guess what, right? That's related to self-improvement.
Yes.
Because you need self-improvement habits to be a good entrepreneur. And guess what? Mental health is related to self-improvement. So I don't have this narrow view of the world that like you've got to be hyper-focused, because the problem is, as a writer and as a creator, just like you get bored. And what happens when you get bored with doing a podcast? You want to stop doing it. So the way I stop being bored is I keep following my interests, right? And then I don't get bored.
I like that. Thank you for clarifying that. Okay, so you started posting to Medium thinking, you're off to the races. It didn't work. Why, and what did you do?
Yeah, I mean, copy and pasting doesn't work because every one of these platforms, it's like learning a language. So if I walked into a room full of French people and started talking Chinese, they wouldn't know what the hell I was saying, right? And so Medium is a language. It looks and feels like any other blog, but once you go really deep and you understand the audience, there are different things. Like, for example, a lot of Medium readers are developers that work in Silicon Valley, right? Not all, but there's a good chunk of them. And a lot of them like cryptocurrency. It's just a thing. So if you happen to write an entrepreneurial article that's targeted towards software developers that like cryptocurrency, you're just touching into a little thing. And it doesn't mean that you write the whole article on it. It just means that you do what I call, which is like you sort of tilt your hat to these nuances of the community, and you're self-aware of the types of people that are on that platform, and you're talking their language, right? Most of them are, a good chunk of them are male, and they're either in their 20s or their 30s, right? So I don't write about like what it's like to retire at 65 because the audience on there is probably not that interested in it. So I was publishing stuff on there. I wasn't getting much traction, but I accidentally came across this guy called Benjamin Hardy. And Benjamin's now a big name guy. He's written several books with Dan Sullivan of what's his app? He's got a meditation app that's very famous. I can't remember it. Anyway, so they've written a bunch of books, and I don't know why, but he sort of took a liking to me out of nowhere, maybe because it was self-improvement stuff and he was writing self-improvement. So I jumped on a call with him. He was really nice. I mean, he was the biggest guy on the platform. I don't know why he wanted to talk to me. And he offered to introduce me to publications. So on Medium, you can write under your own name, but you can also write under a publication within Medium. And at the time, it's a bit different now, but back then, getting in a publication would 10x the reach of the people you could access. So he introduced me to pretty much the 3 biggest publications on the platform. And by doing that, all of a sudden, I had way more eyeballs than I had before. So it was like a head start that I didn't really deserve.
What was his motive?
I don't know what his motive was.
Just wanted to mentor a young bloke through?
He didn't want anything out of me. He's never asked me for anything. We've still remained in contact.
What a blessing.
I've written some, yeah, I know. That's the thing about the internet. There's a lot of just really kind people. And he just did that for me. And I don't even think I would have done anything on Medium if he hadn't have done that, because under my own name, I wasn't really reaching that many people. Mm-hmm. And then gradually as I started writing more on the platform, obviously I moved away from a lot of the stuff that I started with. I started finding a voice, like you mentioned before, and things really took off. Like on the platform now, I have the largest active audience of anyone on Medium, right? Now, it's not as big
Give us a number.
What's the number?
Yeah.
So at the moment, it's 215,000 followers. And that's not big on other platforms, but on Medium, there's no one over 300,000 that I've seen.
Mate, it's huge.
Yeah.
Just tell me, hold that thought where you're going, because what I am interested in, so basically, what was the fellow's name who reached out to you?
Benjamin Hardy.
Benjamin. So what Benjamin...
he's a PhD psychologist.
Okay. So what Benjamin effectively did, and we've spoken about this a lot on the podcast, is he's created strategic partnerships for you. Because as a solo writer, it's bloody hard yards. You just got to keep writing. Most drop off. I see it with podcasts. Most drop off after 6 episodes. Don't know why 6. But you all of a sudden had these opportunities of not 1 but 3 strategic partnerships, which then amplify your message out, by a multiple of whatever, 10, 20, 100. So now you're in front of audiences. So it's a great lesson for anyone listening. What I'm interested in, and it's speculative, but what would you have done, Tim, if Ben hadn't introduced you to these 3 publications on Medium? Do you think you would have persevered? Do you hoping maybe that one article you wrote got the 84,000 shares or whatever it may be?
Well, I already had traction elsewhere at that point. So I may have given up Medium, but I was never going to give up what I'm doing. I'm one of those relentless people. Like, there's really nothing you can tell me that's going to stop me doing anything, right?
Nice.
But the goal back then, which is different to now, is I was doing it because I wanted to get rich and famous, right? Because remember, I was 26. So I was very motivated by the exact wrong things. Now, if you fast forward, I'm not interested in being rich, and I'm definitely not interested in being famous. In fact, I'm going the other direction and saying I actually don't want to grow the audience any further, because I'm worried that if I do, I might accidentally become a Tim Ferriss or someone, and then I won't be able to go travel, won't be able to do anything because everyone's going to recognize me in the street. And already I get a little bit of it just here in Australia.
I was going to say, is that because are you now, whatever rich means, are you wealthy in your own mind that you don't need to worry about that incentive? And are you famous enough in your not even in your niche, that you've kind of ticked those boxes, or you've realised that those 2 drivers aren't important.
No, I don't think I've ticked the boxes on those two. The wealth I'm not far away on, right? And I mentioned to you sort of offline, I had sort of an experience about 18 months ago where, I'm big into cryptocurrencies and someone hacked my cryptocurrency wallet. And overnight, in the space of, 30 minutes, I lost 1.2 million Australian dollars, which for me at the time, it was cold hard cash just sitting there. That was a lot of money. And
just pause on that, mate. I incredibly sorry to hear that. And more people are losing dough via hacks and this whole freaking cybersecurity thing. It's doing my head in. How did you pick yourself up off the ground having lost 1.2 million?
It's a really interesting thing. Had it have happened back in the mental illness days, it would have been a catastrophic event. I mean, what ultimately happened is I discovered at 6 a.m. on a Monday morning that it had happened. And I'm very lucky that I've got some friends in that space who are very, very high up in that world. So I quickly reached out to them and said, look, this is what's happened. What do I do? And by 7 a.m. of that day, all three people said, look, there's no chance you're getting this money back. It's gone forever. I hate to be the one to tell you, but it's gone, right? And so my mentor and former boss from the banking days, without me even asking, he was at my doorstep at about 45 minutes later. And I was pretty devastated. There's a few tears, absolutely. But then within about 24 hours, I was actually really inspired by the whole thing because a couple of things happened, right? First of all, I realized that I have the knowledge and skills to make $1.2 million. So if I can do it once, I can do it again. The second thing I realized is the best education come from these moments, right? So I started saying to myself, and I still say this to this day, that losing that 1.2 million is while I'll probably make 10 million in the next 2 or 3 years, right? I had to lose that money because one, I was getting too arrogant. I was getting way ahead of myself with the cryptocurrency. There's just a lot of things that were happening, and it was a really good ego kind of reset. And then I was sort of talking to my business partner as well, and he's just like, dude, I don't know anyone like that. Like, you just lost a huge chunk of money. Why are you even, like, what are you even doing? How are you even here? And I just always try and see, like, what's the positive out of it? There's nothing I could do. I can't go back and change it now. It's gone, right? So all I can do is build from that experience, and that's mindset, like what we're talking about offline. Once you get that mindset, you become unstoppable. There is nothing that anyone can do that's going to get in the way of what I'm trying to do, including that. And so it's gone. That's it.
And not to mention the plethora of articles that would have come from that terrible, terrible thing to happen to you. It's just
funny enough,
it's made for content.
Yeah, it's a bit of a dicey subject. So I posted on Reddit because I wanted to warn people of what had happened. And to be honest, most of it was my fault, and I won't go into it because it's really kind of nerdy as to how it happened, but it could have been prevented, right? And people are actually really nasty on Reddit. Most people just said you're an idiot, and like it was basically all insults. So I ended up deleting it because I'm like, look, I was just trying to help you, but I read it and it didn't seem that great. So it took about sort of 3 to 6 months before I was comfortable talking about it because I felt a bit embarrassed. And I just found very quickly that people didn't understand what had happened. They just assumed that I was an idiot. And I'm like, guys, like when it comes to the cryptocurrency in that space, I'm very, very knowledgeable. I came across cryptocurrency when I was working in banking back in 2013. So I was a very, very early investor in it. And I understand how things go wrong. But it's one of those things of my education on cryptocurrency had become out of date. So I was doing things that were stupid, but originally back then it was okay. And I hadn't updated my knowledge. And that's how I sort of got hacked, if that makes sense.
Right, back to Medium. At that point in time, you got some strategic partnerships. You're writing on some other platforms as well. Next step to now writing 480,000 words a month. I can already see it. It's very clear now how you can be getting up to that number.
Yeah, it just became addictive. I mean, it was really Medium and LinkedIn that were my main platforms. Even to this day, it's moved a little bit. Medium, not so much anymore. It's not the glory days of what it was, back then. So these days, it's more like LinkedIn, Twitter, and Substack is really the platform. And I think that what happens between then and now is that I was always kind of just paying attention to what platforms were doing. And I noticed that a lot of other sort of entrepreneurs, they were always jumping from platform to platform. They were following the hype. Whereas I've always tried to stay away from that because I just find that a lot of these new platforms that show up, they're just startups and they end up failing. So I didn't do that. And I think that's part of the success is that I've always stayed with the ones that are tried and tested. Even now, like I think LinkedIn and Twitter are probably the two best. and they're both over a decade old. I think LinkedIn's 20 years old now, if I recall.
Yeah, well, no, yeah, that would be right. In fact, the CEO was one of my first guests on this podcast 14 years ago. So,
Yeah.
let's just break that down because there's a couple of questions there.
Sure.
First of all, there's that whole premise. An old friend of mine, James Shremko, came up with the philosophy of own the race course, not the race horse. The race course is your website. You own it. Anything that changes on your website is a result of your decision. So that's the race course, and you want to own that. The race horse is Twitter, LinkedIn, Substack, Facebook, Medium. You have no control over those platforms. They could disappear tomorrow. They probably won't, but they certainly will change tomorrow, whether it be their algorithm or the way you post or whatever it may be. Yet you're investing it. And I know you have timdenning.com, which is your personal blog, and I want to understand how you manage that.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems to me like you're putting an incredible amount of investment in time and money and knowledge into race horses like LinkedIn, Twitter, and Substack. Why?
I am. My philosophy is different to a lot of business owners and marketing people. So, I'm pretty negative on social media in terms of I don't trust them. I've been banned on all these platforms many, many times. I do think they are trying to do the right thing. I don't have these conspiracy theories about them, but I just know that if my account got deleted, there's probably not much I can do about it. So a lot of people preach build the website. I don't really believe in that because I think in 2023, a website to me is becoming irrelevant. If I think of my own browsing history, when was the last time I got excited by someone's website? Not for five years, I reckon. And I think sending people to a website based on the experience that people have. So most people are consuming the internet on their phone. Websites don't look that great on their phone. And generally, we're spending our time in apps on our phone. We're not in Google search looking at WordPress blogs. So I think the behavior has changed.
Interesting.
And so I don't spend a lot of time with websites. And even the timdenning.com one, I only really had that set up 6 months ago. And even for my academy, I don't even have a website for it. And I only just got a logo for it 4 weeks ago. And I've been in business 9 years. So I'm the anti sort of marketing guy. I like having the racehorses of social media. I like to have a few bets in case one of them goes away, in case Elon stuffs up Twitter or whatever. But instead of websites, what I preach is very, very different. I preach email lists, but I go a step further because the challenge with email lists is that Gmail controls the algorithm as well. So for example, if you send an email out of your software that has Elon Musk in the subject, Google will flag that as spam. So even then, you're not 100% safe in email list world, even though all the marketers will tell you, oh, it's all yours. Plus, people's email inboxes are overcrowded. So yes, I do believe in email, but I go another step further. I believe in community is the most powerful thing. And in the future, instead of having a minimum viable product, I believe we will have minimum viable communities. You'll build the community first, and then that community will help tell you what the product is that you need to build. And that's how I've built my business. I haven't created anything. People have told me I have this problem, and I've built them from the community. So what that means practically is you've got your email list. I use ConvertKit. You can use whatever you want. And then you have a community, and that's probably going to be Discord, Slack, WhatsApp, whatever it is. And I think that you need the two of those together to basically, like an insurance policy. If the email doesn't get them, well, the private chat gets them, right? And even then, I still think the chat apps are not great. I think there's better ones to come. But that's how I think about it. And so websites, apps, all these things, I don't really care about too much. I care about community and email list.
Wow. That's different thinking. How does this thinking come about in your head, Tim? Is it through trial and error? Or do you put the smoking jacket on, light a big cigar and sit back in a very reflective pose?
When it comes to business, I do things very differently. So I was trained in the school of agile software development, right? And it was really forced into my brain. And so the only way I do things, which is kind of an accident, is I do a lot of experiments. And everything I do is based on customer feedback. So I build courses, right? I've got about 15 of them. I'm always building new ones. I've just built a mastermind. And I never, ever go, oh, people want a medium course. No. Everything is data backed. I will test content. I'll look at the comments. I will send out a lot of surveys. People think I'm crazy. But I do it. And I send out multiple. I just built a mastermind. I sent out 2 in-depth surveys before I even launched the mastermind because I want to make sure that I'm solving a problem that people have. And then I validate it. With the mastermind, I jump on Zoom calls and I talk to real customers that might buy it. And I say to them and I give them permission. I want you to be blunt. I want you to slap me in the face. What is missing from this product that you would need? And then when they tell me, I write it down. And I do that over and over and over. So in the end, I get something that's crowdsourced. And I just think that's a different approach. And it's built off the back of
Just on that, I did that at the end of last year. I've been getting a lot of encouragement from listeners saying, you know, what else have you got, Timbo? Because this podcast doesn't sell anything outside of third party, like Dell right now is a sponsor. So I get pressure from listeners saying, you know, membership courses, what can you do? So I send out a survey like you have, a survey that I did in Google Forms suggesting that, okay, I'm going to create some kind of membership where you're going to get additional marketing knowledge, inspiration, tips and tricks from me on a regular basis. And asked all the questions, you know, what would you like to see in it? Gave them some options. What would you expect to pay? All the obvious questions. And it came back very positive. Had about, 230 responses. So enough to get some good clarity around what I should do. So based on the responses, I started a Patreon. And in that Patreon, and people can find it over at patreon.com/marketing podcast. And there are 3 levels. And it starts at $8.50, goes through to $500. The middle level's $47. Anyway, won't go into too much detail. 6 months in, I've got 39 members, and I'm really disappointed. and you know, poor Timbo. You know, I'm not expecting people to go, oh, poor Timbo, but I did base it on the findings of my research, and clearly, either the respondents were lying or I misread it.
No, I think you've got some data that says that it works. What I do differently, and there's a lot of things that I just do that people think is crazy. So first off, I don't ask anyone to do anything without giving them an incentive. And because I've been doing it for 9 years, like I know what people want from me. And I'll give you some examples. What do people want from me specifically? They always asking me, how do I find my niche? That's one of the biggest problems. And I have several things I can give them that solve that. They're always asking me, like, what do you read on the weekend? Who are the newsletters that you're obsessed with? They ask me also, how do you write a great headline for a podcast or an article? So I've got all these things that I know that they want. So I give them those things for free to get the survey. That's the first thing. The other thing I do is I learn this from gyms because I'm big into like fitness and stuff. I don't go straight from like a survey to a paid product, right? I never do that. There's always an in-between step. So one thing I'm doing at the moment that I learned from the gym is I do a lot of challenges. So I'm offering a newsletter course at the moment, and I want people to start a newsletter. But the problem is if I go straight from an email that says like, here's a newsletter course and I expect to make money, it's not going to work, right? So what I do is I set a challenge and I also allow them to opt out, right? So you don't have to go to the paid thing. It's fine. I don't really care if you do or you don't. Some people need help, some people don't, and that's fine. And so I run like challenges. So with the newsletter one, a few days ago, I challenged people. I said, I want people to go on Substack and start the newsletter, right? And I don't know, I looked this morning, there's about 300 people that have gone and done that. But I go another step further. I don't just say, go do it, because I'm like their coach. I say, go do it, and then I want you to email me a screenshot. And when you email me the screenshot, then I'm going to send you a reward, right? So now I've got 300 people that have gone and set up a Substack. And the next day I set another challenge. I want you to name the Substack. Because people have a problem like with the action. That's where they struggle. Go name your Substack. The day after, I want you to go post that on Twitter that you've just started a Substack and tell everybody about it, right? And so you go through, I'm not doing this right now, but like this is just an example of a challenge. And then by day 7, it's like, all right, you followed all the steps of the challenge. Here's a paid offer if you want to go to the next step. If you don't want to, you can just keep going by yourself. That's fine, right? And we'll support you on that. We don't really care. And so it's just a different way of thinking. And I just think that too many people are like, here's a thing, buy it. And there's nothing like in between that. And that's why it falls down. So you got 39 people out of that several hundred. They're not lying, but you've got to like test the offer. So when you put the offer up and we do a similar thing to you, we might have 3 tiers. We've been tweaking our tiers for years. And just in the last probably 8 weeks, we've finally found how to get people up to the higher tiers because we just keep changing the offer. And we keep stacking things into that offer that we know that they want. And so initially we stacked it all in the beginner offer. So what happened? Everyone went to that. Now we go, okay, there's the beginner offer. We've taken out all the things that we know that they want, and we've put them in different tiers. And if you do that enough times, you start to get it. And then you've got to play with the price point. We have courses at all different price levels. And we've learned over the years, like a 2-hour course costs this amount and a 10-hour course with coaching from Tim costs this amount. And you just figure it out. But like everyone's audience is different. So maybe for yours, the pricing that you have is just wrong. Maybe the entry level should be $5. Because my view is always I want to bring people up the ladder. So I'd rather start them at $5 and then here's $100, here's 500, etc.
You've mentioned a number of platforms that you're writing for beyond Medium. LinkedIn's great. I mean, from a I certainly find those LinkedIn articles, which I think they're called LinkedIn articles, they're fantastic, and they seem to rank really well. LinkedIn like to sort of give them a lot of shares, and it sort of gets it out there. Twitter, what are you putting on Twitter?
So I love Twitter because the problem with content creation, and it's just going to keep coming back to the same thing, is I got to collect data, right? So every piece of content is a different length. So if you're going to do a 1 hour YouTube video on, say, flow states, well, I'm not going to start with a 1 hour video on flow states because I don't have any data around how to present that topic on YouTube. So what do? I go to Twitter and I write 10 one-sentence tweets about flow states, and I look at the data and go, which is the one that's resonating? What are the comments I'm getting, right? And then I take that tweet and go, all right, well, now let's turn that into a 1,000-word Medium article. I publish that. Okay, that's validated. That did well as well. Now let's take the 1,000-word essay and let's turn that into a 1 hour YouTube video. So I love Twitter because I get really fast responses to an idea, right? Whereas the other platforms, it takes, 24 to 48 hours to kind of the algorithm to share it out. Twitter's really quick. I know within an hour what the idea is. And I just love short form.
And it's reassuring to listeners to know that I think your following is 22,000 on Twitter? It's not huge.
No, I only just started it though about 8 months ago.
Great.
Yeah, so I started from zero.
So you don't need huge numbers.
No, I actually made the mistake on Twitter. I bought followers many, many years ago. So I had 20,000, but they were not engaging. I nuked that account. And 8 months ago, I was like, nah, I'm going to do this properly. I started again. And even now, what's really different about Twitter is that I only ever talk about writing on Twitter. I don't have any other niches. And I did that strategically. So if I did talk about other niches right now, I'd probably have a couple 100,000. But I only want to talk to writers on Twitter. That's it.
Substack's an interesting platform. I'm not sure how many people know about Substack. I really like it. What is it?
Substack is a tricky one because it started as a newsletter platform specifically for writing. Now they do podcasts. Now they do the equivalent of YouTube videos. And they just launched Substack Notes. That's the equivalent of tweets, right? And so it's a sort of like an all-in-one content creator platform, but there's a couple of big differences. The first one being the problem with social media is people can follow you, but you don't get their contact details. So it's useless, essentially, right? With Substack, they go the other way. The only way you can engage on Substack is to subscribe to someone, and the writer or the creator automatically gets the email address. So it's a different type of social media. And the beautiful thing with Substack...
And you can charge.
And you can charge, yes. And you can leave at any time. So you can take your followers, which you have the email addresses of, and go, nah, I had enough. You're not adding any value, and you can take them away. The big change that's happened is that not only are they not just for writers now, they're now also creating discoverability, which didn't exist before. So you can go on there with no readers, start posting, and start to find your own audience. Whereas before, you had to bring an email list. That was the only way to kind of make it work. The other big thing they're known for is they're censorship resistant. All these platforms have issues around moderation. If you've looked at the Twitter files and all the stuff around what's happened there, they've all got issues. Substack has come out and very boldly said, we're not going to moderate anything. Unless you do like murder, rape, or anything in that category. Other than that, they're not going to moderate. And in the age that we're living in, that's a big deal. It doesn't apply to me. I don't touch any of those sensitive things, so it doesn't matter. But for a lot of people, like a Tucker Carlson recently, these types of guys, you're going to see them go to Substack. And so for me, it's one of my number one platforms.
The content you're putting on LinkedIn, Twitter, Substack, timdenning.com, Medium, is it all different?
Medium and timdenning.com is the same. Everything else is all different.
Okay. Twitter, you're only posting about writing.
Yep.
So you are niching there, but the other platforms are life according to Tim.
Yeah, because the problem is when you copy and paste, like I said before, you miss the nuance.
Yeah.
So the key with Substack is it's a bit like Patreon. It's sort of like the other platforms are the main concert, but Substack is the VIP. Mm-hmm. They're the people that want to get behind the scenes and know kind of what you're doing. And so if you just copy and paste content, you're sort of spoiling that VIP experience because like, well, I can get that over here. Why would I come to Substack? And the thing with Substack is it's all about mindset, right? So with Substack, it's a bit like a BMW. So normal social media, like a WordPress blog to me is like a Hyundai Excel. Like I don't really care. It's really cheap and nasty, right? You go on like Forbes.com, you smack with all these ads. It's a crap experience.
Terrible.
The thing with Substack is that they've built this brand so that when people see content on Substack, in their mind, the perception is that that content is higher value than what it is on other platforms. The other beautiful thing with Substack, which I love, is that pretty much everybody on the platform pays for content. It's a default behavior. Whereas on Twitter, the default behavior isn't to pay to read someone's tweet. So what you're doing is you're posting on the Mercedes-Benz full of people that pay for content. So to me, that's probably one of the best places if you're trying to do it as like a business or make money. So that's why I love it.
Let's say a business owner wants to start blogging and they decide to open up a Substack.
Mm-hmm.
Can they embed that Substack onto their website as a blog? Or if they had blog on their navigation bar and someone hit it, they're going to be redirected to their Substack.
Yeah, I don't think you can embed with Substack.
So you leave their website.
But part of the beauty of Substack is that, like I said, it's an ecosystem.
Yes.
And so you kind of don't want to take that ecosystem to your website. You want to leave it there because it keeps the premium feel and it keeps attracting those types of premium readers, for me anyway. And so... yeah, it's underrated. Most people don't get Substack. I've been crapping on about it for years. They've only just hit their sort of pivotal moment probably in the last 4 weeks. I think they're going to be right up there with number 1, number 2 platform if you keep watching. But people are just a bit narrow-minded. They can't see the vision and they don't understand the nuance of what's happening around the censorship and stuff to see why they're rising so fast. And with the internet is moving away from free content. So Twitter and Facebook, they're all charging now to use their sites. Substack was doing that from day one. So as we go more to that world, I think they win the race. That's my prediction.
Yeah, that's interesting. Tim, in 2023, what is a blog and should every business have one?
That's a really hard question. I mean, a blog to me is something that exists on someone's website. It uses the label blog or articles. You click it, and what you see typically is a bunch of like written content that was probably written by a freelancer with some really cheesy stock images that is typically fairly low quality, designed to just get people to buy something from that business. I'm not a huge fan of the traditional blog.
Jeez, you are cynical.
I just don't love it. It's just boring. I'm just bored of blogs. All these other platforms is still blogging. It's just, like I said, there's nuances. It just looks a little bit different. And so that difference changes our perception of what it is. I think, though, the traditional one, which I'm too young, unfortunately, to understand, is blogging is supposed to be, it came from logging, and it's supposed to be like almost like a journal entry on your own website, I think is the original meaning.
Right. Well, it's certainly, I mean, they've been around since the internet's been around. Blogs sort of
Correct.
Were the starting point of the internet.
They were. And even email lists were to a degree.
Yes.
The reason why I love email lists, I got this from James Clear. He said that the default behavior of a user who opens an email or a newsletter is to click links. But the default behavior of someone who's listening to a podcast isn't to like go to a website or click anything because they're listening to it in their earphones. So if you're trying to run a business, don't you want to be in the place where people are clicking links?
Well, hang on, mate. Don't diss podcasts too quickly.
No, I'm not dissing. I'm just saying, like, that's why he says have a podcast, but lead it to the thing that has 100%. All the links in it, right?
Podcasts are great for brand awareness and for raising interest around something, but because people are walking the dog, driving the car, commuting to work, going to sleep, they're not in a position to click a link, basically. So I get it. They're absolutely part of the funnel. For sure. Okay, so you've defined a blog as we all know a blog to be, which is a button on a navigation bar that takes you to a bunch of seemingly potentially boring articles. What is it today? Is it just writing?
It's not just writing. Writing is the foundation of it, and writing is the foundation of all content. Like if you're a YouTuber, guess what? You write the script before you do the YouTube. If you're a podcaster, you're going to write some stuff down before you do the podcast, probably. So writing is always going to be there. What is it today? It's a very multimedia experience. And even that word's like really dinosaur, right? But, it's like if I think about my own stuff, I've got infographics, I've got pictures that are generated by AI, pictures that are not generated by AI. I've got big quotes. I've got tweets embedded. I might have a podcast embedded. Like there's a lot of stuff. So yeah, it's all the forms of content on a page, but ideally not with all the distractions, not with all the pop-ups and the ads and everything, just a very kind of minimalist experience. And the words are the way that people navigate from sort of the top to the bottom, right? That's how I think about it.
I must say, despite what you said about, blogs appearing on websites, you do have a blog on your website, and I love the simpleness of it. I like the user interface. I love the simple stuff like the spacing of not only the text, but the spacing of the lines. It's incredibly easy to read, mate. I mean, putting aside the content of what you're writing, visually, I just want to read it. It takes you on a bit of
music to my ears, because you know how much time I spent to do that?
Did you
It
really?
was actually very hard.
That's really interesting.
I had a web developer and I said, so this is why I love Medium, because I got that idea from Medium. Medium is the easiest text to read on the internet. So I asked my web developer to do that, and it was actually just hard. Getting the right font, getting the right spacing, it just took forever. And then I would look at the website on an iPad versus a phone versus whatever, and it never looked the same anywhere. And eventually we got it to now where it looks good on everything, but it took forever. So,
gee, that's interesting. I just would have thought it might have been an existing theme that you bought, and that's the way the spacing and the kerning and all that.
No, it was all manually done.
Oh, well done, mate, because it's a forgotten part of getting it all right. You can have the best content, you can have the best images and all that kind of stuff, but unless you present it in a way that's super readable, then it's a fail.
It's got to look good on the phone. That's the mistake people make. Otherwise, they can't read it on their phone. So that was the key criteria, right? And you mentioned before around the website. I have the website because it's good overall for like ranking in the search engines, but I've never really done any SEO on it. And we mentioned the business that I had before with over 100 employees. What people don't know is I was like a one-trick pony. The only thing that business had that nobody else had at that time was we were masters in SEO. And not we as in us, we as in we just hired a guy who was ex-Google, and he back then knew everything about SEO, and he could get any keyword that we wanted to rank number one in Google. So first we did it for our own business, and then we started doing it for other businesses, and then we got so good at lead generation that we started a lead generation business selling the leads that we couldn't use to other businesses, right? But now, so I had that knowledge back then. Now I've done no SEO on my own website. And it never really did anything. It's only ever done like 1,000 users a month, roughly. And about 6 months ago, I sort of like changed the web hosting. I did a couple of tweaks, like using an SEO person just with headings and stuff, but nothing special. And last month, that website had 330,000 unique visitors to that website.
Whoa.
So that's really good. But here's the bad thing. I can't capture the email addresses of those people. I need to go back and this ties into a couple other points, right? So I'm not good at capturing the emails. I get about like 0.5% of those people end up becoming email subscribers. And the reason why I love Substack and these platforms, and this is also missed, is that they spend millions and millions of dollars figuring out how to take traffic to their website and convert it into email subscribers. And they've got it down to an art. Like, have a look at the flow of Substack. It'll blow your mind, right? Like it's really elaborate.
It's beautiful.
And I can never do that on my own website because I don't have the knowledge or the time or the money, right? So I would rather send traffic to a place that's good at converting it versus me where I'm horrible at converting it.
Tim, I'm going to put you on the spot here if I haven't already, but okay, I want a bit of a little role play. Let's say, and I'm going to choose a member of my Patreon. The most recent member owns a business that makes pet memorials for your deceased pet. And my dear old Charlie was only put down a couple of days ago after 15 years. So it's quite appropriate. So this new member comes along. They sell pet memorials. It's an e-commerce store. What should they blog about and where?
All right, so here's where people often make the mistake. When businesses blog, I switch off, right? Because that sounds like an ad. And think about what an ad is. An ad is a low quality of piece of content that you are forced to watch on YouTube or on the TV or whatever. You don't want to watch it, but you have to, right? No one wants to create that content. So if I'm a business owner, I'm running an e-commerce store, I don't even know that I have a company blog because it's all just looks like ads to the average person. So what am I doing? Well, that person started that business. They have a personal story. Clearly, they're very passionate about pets. And potentially, I don't know this person, but I'm guessing something happened around the death of a pet that inspired them to start this business. So they're a real human being, and I'm attracted to human beings. I'm not that attracted to like a silly business selling stuff. I don't really care. So that business owner then has the opportunity, whether it's themselves. The other part that's missed, though, is it could be one of their employees as well. It doesn't have to be them, but typically it is the founder. That founder has the opportunity to go on one of these platforms, Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever, and not talk about the products they sell, but talk about the story behind it. Instagram would be a great one, right? Sharing all the like cute dog photos, all that kind of stuff, and building up a Instagram profile of just dog photos. And guess what? On the back end, that dog account happens to sell dog memorials, but that's not front and center. That happens on the back end in emails or whatever. That's how I kind of think about it. It's less businessy and more kind of human.
I agree. I just want to challenge you on, because you're right. You go to so many businesses' websites, and if they do have a blog, it's incredibly boring. The blog articles are generally, we just won this award, or we're celebrating our 10th anniversary. No one cares. No one cares. I interviewed many years ago a fellow, his name escapes me, but he, the Content Marketing Institute out of America. Anyway, he came up with this thing called the editorial mission, which he says it was started by magazine editors many decades ago. Basically, it's made up of 3 questions, and in answering these questions, it'll give you a very clear idea as to what to blog about, podcast about, create social media content about. So let me explain. The questions are, what have you got to offer, to who, and what outcome can they expect? So my editorial mission is marketing tips and tricks for small business owners to generate more inquiry, okay, in a simple form. So if you go to my blog, and I've got a blog on a WordPress site, I'm 87, so cut me some slack, mate. But if you go to my blog, or if you see me speak from stage in a keynote, or listen to my podcast, or read my book, you're going to get marketing tips and tricks for small service-based business owners to generate more inquiry. There's an expectation. You're not going to hear about awards that I might have won or any anniversaries that I've got coming up. So if you go down that path, is that more valid? And could I convince you that maybe a blog for any type of business would be a good idea?
I mean, look, everything works. It's not that you wouldn't do it. It's just like what's going to work the best, right? I think what you described there, those 3 things, I mean, that's just copywriting. It's a fancy way of saying copywriting.
Yes.
My academy teaches people copywriting. I get it. The mistake people make with copywriting, though, is that I just think people are too quick to sell up front. I do all those copywriting, all those things, but it happens more on the back end. If you think of it as a funnel, the top of the funnel, I don't want to get too salesy and too into my products and how my products can solve your problem, because then you just sound like an ad. And as soon as I think you're trying to sell me something, I'm probably going to switch off. It doesn't mean that like all business social media and all business content is bad, but like 99% of it is. I occasionally see a good one. There's one on LinkedIn. They're a marketing agency, and they just post really funny memes on LinkedIn. They've got a massive following. Like, that's rare. I don't see many that do that.
Should be more of it.
If I think about Twitter, I don't mind like the Hungry Jacks and like the Domino's Twitters are like really entertaining and funny, but again, behind that is like tens of millions of dollars of investments. Most business owners are probably not going to nail that. So out of the strategies that you could pick from, I just don't like that one as much. Trying to talk about the problem that your business solves, it's a little bit boring.
Love it. Hey, Tim, you've got Bad-Assery Academy on the Teachable platform.
Yeah.
Behind it, you've got some great courses: Medium, Bad-Assery, LinkedIn Mastery, the Amazon Book Publishing Shortcut, the Writer's Email List Playbook, 6-Figure Copywriting for Writers. There's a lot of courses on writing. AI in the last 6 months has come to pretty much a lot of people's attention thanks to the open source Chat GPT, of which we can all key in whatever request we want, and it's going to write us an article. Is your profession dead? Are you staring down the barrel of having to shut the doors on everything, or not? What's your view on AI?
Yeah, AI is a tricky subject. We've definitely made some changes. So I think the cost of information is probably going to $0. So I don't want to be a business that's selling information. And I think about like what we do really well. Yeah, we have the information, but we have a few things, right? We're very good with like keeping people accountable for the goal that they have. we're very good at building community and hosting like in-depth quality conversations. And we're very good at giving out information through our courses, but information that you can't Google, right? So like I sit on calls all day with, Substack, LinkedIn, all these platforms, and I learn things from that, but I can't necessarily write and publish that stuff, right? Or I talk to, most of my friends in my inner circle are 6 and 7 figure creators that do exactly what I do. So to me, this whole world looks really simple because I'm surrounded by these people and I learn things, but they don't really, they don't talk about it. Like some of the things that people do on Twitter, you can't Google it. Like people buy, for example, on Twitter, people buy reshares is one way they grow their account. It's a taboo thing. It doesn't exist in Google, but all the big accounts do it and nobody talks about it. And if you ask them, they'll deny it point blank, but they all do it, right? I know because I'm friends with them. And so that's the type of thing that we sort of put into our courses, and AI can't replace that, right? Is it going to affect writing and that? Yes, it is. It means all the, people writing these $5 articles for content mills and putting them on these business blogs, all that stuff's going to $0, right? But people that are sharing like high quality content that's funny, that's got personality, that has their own stories, AI doesn't live a life. It doesn't have any stories to share. It can only take other people's stories.
Not yet.
Well, not yet.
They reckon ChatGPT-4 could be, what's the word, sentient?
Yeah, I know. So look, it's going to affect it, but I look at it more with an optimist mindset of, I'm a writer, and just like the phone became my second brain, I'm now going to plug in like a third brain, which is this AI kind of thing, and it's going to do all the research and all the annoying admin tasks that I don't want to do. I don't think it's going to replace me, but if you're low value in business, these technologies more and more, just like the internet replaced a lot of like mums and dads retail stores, AI is 100% going to replace a lot of these knowledge workers that are not adding much value. I think back to like accountants, right? Like I get really angry with the accounting industry because they don't really do anything. They sort of help me with compliance, but not really. And I pay them.
Mate, they haven't got time.
Well, I don't know what they're doing, but like they're not. What I want is business advice, and what I tend to get is.
That's all they're doing. They're just complying. To rip a business, you never not. If you're an accountant without a client, you are doing something very wrong.
Correct. But in the end, if AI starts to automate my compliance, and we're getting close, like I use Xero is getting very close to automating a lot of my reconciliation. I don't really need these accountants unless you're giving me good tax advice or something. I don't really need you. So they're the dangerous professions.
Tim, hopefully we've inspired a lot of listeners to get writing, whether it be on Medium or Substack or their own blog. One of the questions I get asked all the time is, how can you continue to come up with ideas after 640-something episodes? And there are a lot of listeners right now screaming down the speaker. By the way, the speaker doesn't work like that. It's not a microphone, guys. How do you keep coming up with content ideas? AI obviously is now a great help to that, but prior to that, what's your strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I teach a whole course on this, right? But there's a couple of things I do. First off, I have a whole very complex note-taking system. So the reality of the content you put out comes from the content that you consume. So I use a tool called Roam Research, and every day I'm reading and listening to podcasts and doing all these things, and I take very extensive notes, and I recycle a lot of those ideas in my own content. So that's one thing I kind of do. I like playing these games. I forgot what you call it, but it's where you like write down an idea and then you draw a line and that leads to another idea. And you just keep going more and more out. And so before you know it, you've got like hundreds of ideas. It's a mind map. That's what it's called. I like to do mind maps, right? I don't think you ever run out of ideas unless you stop consuming. And I like to document things that are happening in my own life. So I have like it's not a journal. It's like a timeline of my entire life. And I created this maybe about a year ago. And all the time I'm adding things to that timeline. So that way, when I want to create something, I go to that timeline combined with all the things I'm consuming, and you sort of get this fusion of like ideas. So I think there's just so many millions of ideas because we have access to the internet. We're never going to run out. I do use ChatGPT for a few things. So like recently I wrote something about Marilyn Monroe. And the problem is when I Google Marilyn Monroe, first of all, I get a lot of ads and I get a lot of things that are not related. And then if I do find stuff, all I get is the generic story of Marilyn Monroe. But what I wanted was like, what's a story about Marilyn Monroe that nobody knows or that has very low traction or that most people wouldn't know? And ChatGPT is really good at giving me that. So I use it for that. Or if I'm looking for I'm writing an article about people that have lost between $1 and $10 million. So it's very specific. Google's not going to give me a good answer on that. But if I go to ChatGPT, it's smart enough to like find the stories and then also go the next level of curation and make sure that there were only losses between 1 and 10 million. And then I could go further and say, and they had to have occurred in 1987.
Yeah.
Right? Google can't do that.
Brilliant.
So that's why I love it.
Yeah. No, and exactly what I thought. I mean, you'll never run out of, you just have to reassure people you will not run out of ideas. And what happens is as you build an audience, people send you ideas anyway. Like I'm constantly getting emails from listeners saying, hey, do this or do that, or within my Patreon or via my social media. So it's a fantastic way. What was that tool? Was it Rome Research?
Rome Research. The main ones in that game is Rome Research, Obsidian is another one, and Notion. And now the difference with these is if you think about Apple Notes or these types of really simple ones, the problem with them is that you put a note in and then retrieving it later is really hard because there's no context around that note, right? So the difference with Rome is it's a bit like a mind map. Every note that you place in there connects to the other notes. And there's even AI underneath that starts to like recommend previous things that you've saved based on whatever it is that you're trying to do. And so what I do is I use hashtags. So I put notes in and I categorize them with hashtags.
Clever.
Right? And the other problem with hashtags is like you have to know what is the hashtag that you're trying to look up. But these tools are now getting smarter where they can sort of like self-categorize things. So the difference is that they're not called note-taking apps. They're often referred to as like second brains. And there's a couple other terms that are sort of coming out. So they're note-taking apps on steroids. Tim,
I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. Congratulations on, we started off with your bio and all these wonderful things that are happening. It's 18 months old. Like this is, you're a newbie, mate, and you're smashing it. So well done to you. I'm interested in the answer to my last question. I've mentioned timdenning.com along the way as a place to find you, and that's your personal website. But where would you like to direct people? You've got Teachable, you've got Medium, you've got the Bad-Assery Academy, you've got all sorts of things. Where do you want to send people?
Well, I want to send people.
And you've got one. You can only choose one.
Look, timdenning.com, and the email list is the best thing that I do, right?
Yes.
It's not, you can't Google it. That's where all the fun stuff happens.
It's prolific too. So if you want, if you don't mind getting an email a day, and people go, oh, that's spam. It's not spam if it's helpful. It's not spam if it's going to improve your life. And I say this genuinely, mate. Your emails are great. I open them. I open them and read them.
So I have 2 email lists, by the way. So that one is daily. Well, it's not daily. It depends on what it is. But the Substack is once a week. So for people that don't want to get bombarded, that's probably the smarter one.
This is the one from your website.
Yeah, the website one depends on what we're doing. We like to talk a lot and we're less worried about unsubscribers. Whereas on the Substack, it's once a week. It's very specific around a couple of topics.
Awesome, brother. All right, everyone, timdenning.com. That's where you're going. It all starts from there. Hey, thanks, mate. We'll check in a couple of years' time, see where you're at.
Absolutely.
Well, there you go, team. Prolific content creator Tim Denning. What a super interesting and generous guy. And I encourage you to check out some of his articles over at Tim Denning. That's DENNING.com. They're great. They really are. They're beautifully written. They're beautifully presented. They're easy to read, short, sharp, bits of information and inspirations that are going to move you forward. Good on him for doing what he's doing. He's created a great little business there and got some great courses, by the way. I'm in the middle of his LinkedIn course at the moment. Hey, what caught your attention? I'd love to know. Give the hotline a buzz, 0480 015 150, and let us all know. I might play it on an upcoming episode. I probably will. So be sure to leave your business name for a bit of gratuitous self-promotion. 0480 015 150. Righto, it's time to take action on what you've learnt, because ideas without action remain exactly that, ideas. If you'd like to support the work I do for small business and want even more of me, then please check out my exclusive business owner membership over at patreon.com/marketing podcast, where membership does start at a tax-deductible $8.50 a month, no lock-ins. Next week, I'll share a very, very emotional interview I did with a butcher and his wife from a small town in Tuscany. Boy, oh boy, did I love doing that one. It was a massive surprise, but I just think there's some gold in there. Around customer experience in particular, and around having a big heart as a business owner. You'll see what I mean when you hear it. If you enjoyed today's episode, please hit the subscribe button on your favourite podcast app where you'll find 636 more chats with successful business owners. Free. Nada. Well, for the time being anyway. Hey? Big thanks to editor Alex Amster for stitching the marketing gold together, and to our in-house rock star Lockie Doley for the music bed, who's about to embark on a massive Australian tour. Check him out. He is awesome. Most importantly, a big thank you to you, the motivated business owner, for giving me your time to listen to this little old podcast. I appreciate it more than you can imagine. May your marketing be the absolute best marketing. Bye for now.